Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Gutsy Christianity with Rosa Hopkins. Today we'll be speaking with Cari Jehlik, and so we're just going to have a conversation. And welcome to the show, Cari. It's good to have
Thank you
you.
very much. I'm excited to be back.
Absolutely. And so, I don't know, we've been talking amongst ourselves about codependency, and I personally think that a lot of times in the church they teach us things, theology that sounds a lot like they're actually teaching codependency. And sometimes people argue that those kinds of behaviors are how Christians should endeavor to live. I would disagree with that. What do you think? Have you ever noticed that or encountered things like that?
I think in certain circles, that's definitely true. So, codependency, for those who aren't aware of what codependency is, it's an actual psychological disorder wherein the codependent is is essentially completely neglecting of their own emotional health. They take care of their own emotional health through caring for the person they're codependent on, which means their sense of well-being, of purpose, of identity is entirely wrapped up in the other person. So that is codependency. Just to get a
A definition out
not
there.
very scientific, but it's a pretty good definition. So so teachings that encourage others to serve other people at the expense of themselves is it's an over application of or a misapplication of that idea. We need to remember that we are human beings, that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves, correct? So
Absolutely.
we start out by loving ourselves, and if we are constantly only concerned about other people around us, we are not actually taking care of ourselves. So I think, yeah, definitely in some circles, codependency kind of is what's preached, and that's definitely not healthy psychologically for either person, and not healthy emotionally, spiritually. Basically, codependency is not healthy in any way.
No, absolutely. And, but Jesus does tell us to forgive 70 times 7. And when you forgive, though, I think a lot of people think that it means that you can become somebody's punching bag or even that you should. And yet we see where Jesus did not stay when the Pharisees were going to kill him. They were going to throw him off a cliff in one instance, and they were going to stone it. Well, I'm not sure about that last part, but they were they were going to be violent, and you don't see where he allowed them to do that necessarily. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely not. I think,
Yeah.
again, forgiveness. We need to be taking care of our own health and our own bodies, our own minds. So to be forgiving to someone, even if they don't know that you've forgiven them, it's more about us and releasing that control that they have over us. When I ended a long relationship, it was a very complicated breakup, and there was a whole lot of forgiving that I had to do, but that certainly did not mean keeping that person in my life. You
Hmm.
know, he had to be gone, gone, long gone. Like,
Yep.
I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear from you. None of that.
Excommunicated.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly. But like, for my own mental health, I had to get him out of my life,
Hmm.
and I actually had to cut off friendships with some other people who were very closely tied to him because it was not good for me.
Yep.
And as like all people, I have a complicated past, and I've got some of my own issues. Welcome to the club of humanity, right?
Right.
um there are other people in my life who I have looked up to and idolized so much that it became unhealthy, and so I also had to like cut ties with them, because again, I needed to be able to be myself, and as long as they were in my life, I couldn't be myself, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. So
Absolutely.
yes, we should certainly, submit to one another. We should forgive as much as God forgives us. We should, be willing to turn the other cheek, those kinds of things. But that is
Mm-hmm.
certainly not an invitation for repeated abuse and mistreatment.
Yeah, and there's a story. I like to think about this when I think about letting people just endlessly take things. When Jesus fed people the fish and the loaves, which sounds so delicious, by the way, but when he made them, I like to say the fish sandwiches, then the people followed him the next day. They actually had to seek him out. They had to get into boats and cross over. They said, "Oh, we woke up. Jesus is gone. Where is he? Let's go find him." And today, if that happened, if you were at a church and all these people showed up, you would say, "Hooray, our numbers are up." But Jesus didn't do that. Instead, he said, "You only seek me because you ate the fish and the loaves and your bellies were filled. But what you really should be seeking is the bread from heaven, which was Jesus, and that the people that eat that bread would never be hungry again, and that they were to eat his flesh and drink his blood." And then a lot of them said, "Oh, who can follow this?" And then they turned and they left, and they didn't understand what he was speaking about. But he didn't give them more bread and more fish. He didn't say, "Well, you're all here, and okay, I'll give you whatever it is. Please love me. I am desperate for you to
Mhm.
stay, and I'll do whatever I have to do to get you to stay." And so many times I'm sorry.
Challenged them. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, 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 that's okay. And so many times in our even in our church outreaches, we seem so desperate, and we're begging people. And you see that Jesus didn't do that. He didn't just take anything, and I think we don't understand boundaries.
Bingo. Boundaries changed my whole life.
Really? Okay. You can't just leave that there. You have to let's talk about it. How did that happen? They changed my life, and that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah. End of story. No. So there is a book out there. It's called Boundaries by some psychologists, and it's a really great book. I definitely recommend it.
It's
But they talk
Henry Cloud.
Doctors Cloud and Townsend. But they give a really nice like analogy of boundaries as gates. So boundaries are gates, and you either let good stuff in or you let bad stuff in, and either let good stuff out or bad stuff out, or keep them out. And they explain, they break people up into all these different groups. And essentially, the group that I fell into is I was really good at keeping the good stuff out and letting the bad stuff in. So my boundaries were completely
Mm.
backward. So I read this book and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be keeping the bad stuff out and letting the good stuff in. Totally revolutionized my whole life. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't like conflict. I'm very conflict averse. I will never talk about anything if I don't have to, anything like hard or difficult, or I'm not going to bring it up. But this helped me to be able to start doing that, or at least to be like, no, that's bad. I need to
Mhm.
and let that out. But I also need to let people in who actually care about me,
Mhm.
and and who genuinely love me, which is exactly the opposite of codependency, which is you just let anybody in so that you can take care of them, so that you can have this sense of self-worth. Because when you have codependency, you literally don't have any idea who you are or what you want. It always makes me think of the movie Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts. And she does not know. There's a scene in there where Richard Gere asks her, "What kind of eggs do you like?" And she has no idea what kind of eggs she likes, because every person she's been with, she just likes the kind of eggs that they like. Total codependency. But taking care of yourself is stepping back and saying, I like eggs Benedict. I hate scrambled eggs. I hate over easy eggs Benedict. Those are the eggs I like. That is not being codependent anymore, if that makes sense. And of course, it's a very complicated process. It takes a lot of, professional help. You can't overcome codependency by yourself. You need to seek help. But that's, I think that is more of a biblical biblical concept of taking care of yourself. And when you take care of yourself, you can actually take care of your brothers, your neighbors, and the people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is good to serve one another. And that the reason, though, from what you're describing about codependency, is the service comes out of a place of need more than it does out of truly loving and caring for that other person.
Mm-hmm.
And so it almost seems, though, that in a way it's taking from the person that you're serving if you're on that side.
Or even enabling their bad behavior.
Right, because you're not letting them get better. You're actually stepping in and rescuing them instead of allowing consequences. And I know a lot of times God will teach us things through allowing natural consequences. I'm just thinking of us when we were badly, deeply in debt. God allowed that. And if somebody had bailed us out, we wouldn't have learned how to be frugal and get out of debt and hopefully stay out of debt and all those wonderful things that we learned. And
Principles and how to manage your own money. And yeah, absolutely.
exactly. And if you have children, how many times do you just let natural consequences? Sometimes because, okay, they're not going to learn. Although sometimes that backfires.
And they really enjoy what
Yes.
punishment.
But my child keeps asking for flavored water, and I'm like, no, you can't have that. You just have the regular water. And I thought, well, fine. She's not going to like it. Fine. You can have the flavored water, and then you'll see why mommy said no. And she's like, ooh, that's like candy. Ooh,
Right.
more flavored water. And I said, okay, this obviously didn't work. So, anyway, let me see here. So yeah, that's very interesting how something good that is done for the wrong reasons actually ends up hurting the person. So what do you think happens to somebody if they just continue to meet other people's needs in order to meet their own needs? What does that do over time?
I think ultimately they end up self-destructing, or they get to the end of their life and they have no idea who they are,
Wow.
and they can't. Um, yeah, they just their entire life has been made up of meeting other people's needs, so that they don't know who they are, they don't know what they like. And I have a friend who is in the midst of healing from this, and that is what my friend tells me over and over again is, I need to figure out what I need, and I don't know how to do that. I don't know what I need. When someone asks, what do you need? I can't answer that question.
Wow.
But,
So
but
so
my friend working through this with a counselor and with a pastor, and using that double-edged approach, where she's getting both the secular psychologist side and the religious pastor side.
absolutely. And so it would be vital then if you identify with anything that we've been talking about to seek professional help. And so I thank you for joining us on Gutsy Christianity with Rosa Hopkins and our guest Cari Jehlik. You can find me at gutsychristianity.com, and today's episode was sponsored by Choice Writers. Elegant copy from the best writers, choicewriters.com. Thank you and goodbye.